In this video I want to introduce the switch statement. So we're going to be looking at the following problem. It says the user enters a symbol for a student, so that's an A, a B, a C, a D or an E, and based on that symbol different things are displayed. For example, if the user enters a C, you would display OK mark, or if the user enters an E, you would display you failed. So based on the A, B, C, D or E, it determines what's printed on the screen. If one have to use an if statement, or in this case a nested if statement, it becomes a very complicated if statement. So if the user enters an A, you will print excellent mark, else. If it's a B, you print good mark, else, else, else. So as soon as you go further than 2 or 3 else if statements, the statement in C# becomes complex to read and in a certain sense sloppy. So the switch statement is used to improve on this kind of coding. I will get into more detail about how the switch statement works and the syntax, but just with a glance you can now see that the values A, B, C, D and E that the user enters is now seen as different cases. So it basically replaces the nested if, and if the user enters an A, it will print excellent mark. If it's C, then it goes to case C and it prints OK mark. So that's just an overview of the switch statement, which replaces the nested if. But in the following slides I will look in more detail at the syntax. The switch statement always starts with the word switch, and directly after the switch in brackets is the variable that you would have used in your if statement. So remember that the if statement said if symbol is equal to A, else if symbol is equal to B. So you start with the word switch, and then the variable that was used in the if statement is within brackets. After that, the switch starts with an open curly bracket and right at the bottom a closed curly bracket. Okay, the next important part of the switch statement are your different cases. So to replace the statement if symbol is equal to A, you have the word case. So it's case, then the value of symbol that would determine that specific case, followed by a colon. And then you have the statement or statements that would happen if the symbol has the value A. So notice here we've got case A, and I always also highlighted case D. But you've got a case for A, B, C, D, and E. Notice that every case ends with the word break and a semicolon. So case A says right line excellent mark, and then to determine that you're at the end of case A, you have the word break. So you'll see there's a break after each case. A case does not only need to have one statement. You can have many statements within case. For example, in this one, I've added a second right line statement if the user enters an A. But then still, after the last statement that's part of the case, you have the break. So for each case you can have one or many statements. You don't need to do it, but it's always good practice to have your switch statement end in what we call the default case. This simply means that if the user entered something for symbol and it didn't fall into any of the cases A, B, C, D or E, so if you've gone through all the cases and didn't go into any of them, you have the default case right at the end. So if the user, for example, entered an H or a Z or a 5 or any other character other than A, B, C, D or E, the default case will become true, and in this case it will print wrong symbol. Just something on the use of the break. What I've done here is I've taken out the break after case A. Now in other languages this could imply that if the user enters an A, it goes in and it prints excellent mark, and then because there is no break it goes through, it kind of falls through to the next case and also prints good mark. But in C# this is not allowed. So if you don't have a break at the end of a case statement, you will have a syntax error and it should not compile. So that would be an illegal statement not to have a break. Just to repeat, you can't do that for the user to print an A, enter an A, and for the program to display excellent mark as well as good mark. The only time where the program would kind of go from one case to the other is when the first case is totally empty. So in this case, I've changed the program to say if the user enters whether an A or a B, I want excellent mark to be printed. So in the switch statement, I say case A and I don't say anything, and then it's followed by case B, which says excellent mark. So because case A is empty, it now kind of falls through to B and prints excellent mark. There are certain data types that you are allowed to use in a switch statement. For example, the char and the int are the two that you will probably use the most. Notice the difference between the char. You say case and then in quotes A, because that's how you determine a char. But if you have an int at the bottom, it's just case 5 without the quotes, because you're working with a normal number. The one data type that you will use in C# this year, which you cannot use in the switch statement, is the double. You can use the char, the int, the bool, and the string, but it won't allow you to use the double. You need to develop a feeling, or a gut feeling, for when to use the switch statement and when not. For example, in this case, the question says read in the temperature, and if it is from 20 to 30, display moderate. Now if you wanted to use the switch statement, that is what it would look like. You would have 11 case statements and right at the bottom a console write line moderate. Clearly that is not a very effective way of coding, so it would simply be better to say if temperature is greater than or equal to 20 and temperature is less than or equal to 30. So you don't use the switch statement if you have a long range of values that determines the same action.